Namaste. In this video, we will be going over straight and reflex angles. So what is a straight angle? These are any angles that measure exactly 180 degrees. There are several examples that I could construct, but the easiest one would be a simple horizontal line. And what's special about them is that they are always straight lines, like their name suggests. So a horizontal line could work, a diagonal line could work, and even a vertical line. So the point is that they are straight lines. What about a reflex angle? These are any angles that measure between 180 and 360 degrees. Now, constructing them is similar to constructing acute angles. Remember, in the previous video, we went over them. So just a quick refresher. To do that, we have two lines, and remember those lines are called rays that intersect at a common point called the vertex. Now, we know that this is the acute angle. What about the reflex angle? Well, if they measure between 180 and 360 degrees, then that would correspond to this section of the angle. So let's say, for example, that our acute angle measured 45 degrees. Well, the reflex angle would then measure 315 degrees. Because notice how these two angles form a circle, and a circle has 360 degrees in it. So therefore, that would be 315. Now that we've talked about straight lines, let's talk about what it means for two angles to be supplementary. Remember that complementary angles always add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles always add up to 180 degrees. And what's special about them is that they always deal with straight angles. So let's look at a quick example. A straight angle is simply constructed by drawing a straight line. And let's say that I split up this straight line into two separate angles. If this angle is called x, how could we determine the measure of this angle? Well, remember, if it needs to add up to 180, this must be 180 minus x. And to validate that, we could simply do 180 minus x plus x. And notice how both these x terms cancel out, and we're left with 180. For our first practice problem, we're asked to select all the reflex angles. Before I get started, I encourage all of you to pause your videos and give this problem a shot. Okay, assuming you've given a go at it, let's get started. So remember that a reflex angle always measures between 180 and 360 degrees. Notice how some of these diagrams are labeled, whereas others are not. So let's see. With the first diagram on the top left, we have that it's labeled as 225. Is 225 greater than 180? It sure is. Is it less than 360? Yeah. So therefore, this is a reflex angle. What about our second diagram? To me, that looks like an obtuse angle. Remember, an obtuse angle is between 90 and 180 degrees. So therefore, that is likely not a reflex angle. The next diagram showcases a 190 degree angle. That is greater than 180, and it's also less than 360. So therefore, it is also a reflex angle. What about the next diagram? 121 degrees. Is that greater than 180? No, it's less than. So therefore, we can classify this as an obtuse angle. The next diagram similarly showcases an angle that is less than 180 degrees. 110 is too small to be a reflex angle. Our next diagram shows an angle called A, and to me, it looks like it measures around 340 degrees. That's just an estimate, but that is a reflex angle because it's not an entire circle, nor is it less than an obtuse angle. So therefore, we can say that this is also reflex. The next diagram also shows a reflex angle. You can tell that because it's similar to how this one was 225. And lastly, we have a 135-degree angle. Like our previous examples, this showcases an obtuse angle, so it is therefore not reflex. We're now asked to solve the following. So in the first diagram, we have an angle WXY, and it appears to be a straight angle because WZ is a line. We know that the measure of YXZ is 48, and we're trying to solve for X. So how can we do this? Well, if you recall from the previous video, this is similar to the complementary problems we had earlier. So we can set up an equation. Since supplementary means that they add up to 180, we know that X plus 48 must equal 180. This is just a simple equation that we can solve by subtracting 48, and we get that X is equal to 132 degrees. Let's move on to the next problem. In this case, we do not have a diagram. We're given that angle A and B are supplementary. A measures 142, and we're asked to find the measure of angle B. So this is similar to the previous problem, except we don't have a diagram. So I can set up an equation knowing that A is 142 by stating that 142 plus B equals 180. And to solve this equation, simply subtract 142 from both sides, and you get that B is equal to 38 degrees. And for our final practice problem, we will attempt it in the same way by setting up an equation. So since these are supplementary angles, we can say that X plus 149 equals 180. And by subtracting 149 from both sides, we get that X is equal to 31 degrees. We're now asked to construct a quadrilateral that has a reflex angle. So remember that a quadrilateral has 4 sides, and the reflex angle is between 180 and 360 degrees. So how can we construct this? Well, there are actually multiple constructions that work, and I'll show you one of them. So here, we have our reflex angle taking place over here. And notice how all the other angles are acute, meaning that they are less than 90 degrees. So this satisfies the condition because it has 4 sides and it has one angle that is greater than 180 but less than 360 degrees.